Those that'll be joining us, let me kind of introduce myself. I'm Bill Lutz. I'm the creator of the Civic Capacity newsletter that kind of covers Troy and Miami County. And with me today is Joe Case of Marysville Matters, does the same thing. And one of the things that Joe has been really talking about in his newsletter are property taxes here in Ohio. I've kind of done the same thing, but Joe has really kind of taken it up a notch. And and I'm wondering, Joe, you know, are people that you're encountering on the street, you're running into them at the Walmart or the Myers or the gas station, are they talking about property taxes there in Marysville?
I think people are talking about it all the time here. Marysville is in that, Union County is in that 6 year cycle where property tax valuations are updated. And so it's been 6 years. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the state, and people are anticipating, and our county auditor has even acknowledged, hey, there's going to be an increase in valuations. Now, increase in valuation does not mean if your property value goes up 20%, it doesn't mean your taxes go up 20% because tax rates are different for all the political subdivisions that impact your property. But as the values go up, property taxes are going up. I saw a stat this past week with the County Auditors Association. I think they said something like the average property tax in Ohio between 2019 and 2023 went up 20%. So, everybody's feeling the pressure. And then you have, so everybody here is very attuned to the fact that next week they're going to get a postcard from the county auditor with preliminary valuations. And there's a whole process that counties go through on this thing. But I just heard our county auditor speak this morning about the process. And, essentially, they've been working all year to do appraisals on every single parcel of land in the county. They do this. They have the ability to do this. The valuations aren't made up. They base them on real estate transactions. So it's based on market activity. And so we're all going to find out how much our property values go up. For me, I'm on a fixed income. I'm semi-retired, but I'm pretty happy with my property valuations going up because that's part of my asset growing in value. It's one of the great parts of owning land. But when you get into situations where you have people on a fixed income and they aren't able to afford these 20% increases in their property taxes, that becomes a real issue. And I think that we're kind of one of the hot spots in the state this year, here where I live, with regard to these valuations and what it's going to do to taxes next year.
Yeah, because Marysville, Union County, Central Ohio, one of the fastest growing parts of the state. And I'm sure you're having a housing or at least a perceived housing shortage.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
you've got folks that can't, it's not so much an affordable housing issue, but an attainable housing issue where house prices are just outpacing average wages and what folks can actually bring up and earn. And you guys have a bit of a double whammy because you just had a contentious school issue passed back in the May ballot, right?
Yeah, it was. The district tried to convince voters to pass a 5.5 mil 10-year emergency levy last November. It was rejected by, that was a big general election, 18,000 voters, and it just lost by a little bit. They came back in the spring, same issue, and in the spring primary, smaller turnout. But it passed by more than 60% of the people who turned out at the polls. So, the school district here, like most districts across the state, struggling to figure out funding. And a lot of our school districts are very dependent on property tax revenue because that's the way the state has structured it, even though way back in 1997, the Ohio Supreme Court said that the way that Ohio funds schools through property taxes is unconstitutional.
Yeah, and it seems like if you want to take a look at this issue through kind of like a state house lens, some of those chickens have come home to roost, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much have they come home to roost or is it intentional, right? I mean, way back when I was working in state government 20 plus years ago, there was this push in the state budget. I think it was back in 2005 to change the way we tax businesses in Ohio,
Mhm.
right? And the state legislature in 2005, I think it was, I might be wrong on that, but I think it was 2004, 2005. They said, hey, we're going to phase out the tangible personal property tax. And that's where I live, that's Honda,
Yeah.
not the car dealership, the factory. And
I-
all of the stuff inside of the building is taxable. The inventory is taxable. The parts, the supplies are taxable. I'm not picking on Honda. That's every business paid a tangible property tax. And they said, hey, we're going to phase this out over 20 years. Um, and at this point in time, I think this past school year was the last year that the Marysville Exempted Village School District collected tangible personal property taxes. And it's millions and millions and millions of dollars that they're not able to collect anymore from their local tax base because that's been taken away by the state legislature in their wisdom. You know, if you step back and look at all of this, it just feels like this has been systemic over time. And I don't know anything. I just read what I see and know what I know. But you know, 15 years ago, there was a local government fund that helped
yeah.
fund local governments. That doesn't exist anymore. And the state legislature has pushed all of these local funding obligations down to the local level, right? Tangible personal property tax is gone. Local government funding is all pushed on local government. Go ask your city council members what they think about potential increases in police and fire pension payments. Right? But all of this is being pushed down on taxpayers, and I think we've kind of come to this tipping point where people are like, it's this perfect storm where there's been this systemic push on funding of local government services all the way down to the local level, no help from the state, whether it's schools, fire, police, city, county. And then you've got this property increase issue in Ohio, the property value increase. And I just think it's turning into the perfect storm.
Yeah, it really certainly feels that way. And you're right, Joe. It was like, that was they phased out the tangible personal property tax in favor of the commercial activity tax. None of those dollars were going to go to locals. Those dollars were just going to be kept at the state.
Right.
You see time and time again where the state's just like, we'll take ours and cut everybody else out of the process. If local communities want to make those choices to have higher taxes to do things, they're more than welcome to do so. And well, guess what's happened? That's happened. And, over the last 6 months, as we've seen in Columbus, I mean, I'm sure every state legislator has something that they want to do, state property taxes, but it's just, it's piecemeal stuff that doesn't make any real change. And you've got state legislators saying, hey, if the locals aren't going to fix this problem, we're not going to fix it.
Right. Yeah. And so therein um, you have people taking the issue into their own hands, right? We've got the Citizens for Property Tax Reform group out of Cuyahoga County. They are circulating petitions around the state. They have to get a certain amount of legal signatures, verified signatures to get the issue on the ballot to basically change the Constitution and totally repeal property taxes across the state of Ohio. Um, sounds great. I hate property taxes. I don't like paying them. But if my house catches fire, I want the fire department to be able to come and put the fire out, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's a sign of people's frustration on the issue. The fact that people are actually now aggressively out collecting signatures to get an issue on the ballot to repeal property taxes. I call it kamikaze fiscal policy. It's just like this burn it down attitude, because people are so fed up and so frustrated they just don't care. But there are consequences if we repeal property taxes without some sort of plan B. And people don't think about that. It's a visceral emotional issue, and where it'll be interesting to see where we go in the next year and a half with regard to property tax reform in the state.
Well, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If that measure gets on the ballot, it's gonna pass 60-40.
Do you think so?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think there's so much frustration with local residents paying property taxes that they're just going to vote to say, yeah, let's get rid of it. And another thing that happens, there's very few times your government actually takes the time to ask you how you feel about things. And a ballot initiative is one of those few times.
Yeah.
So it's like if you don't if I don't like the governor, I can't vote for him again. Well, guess what? I'm voting no on it. Or I don't like the way Job and Family Services treated me in the last interaction I had. You name it. Just whatever frustration you have with state government or local government, it's all right there in that one issue. And yeah, it would have no problem passing, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, the way I look at it, I kind of go back to our school levy situation here in Marysville last year. Got knocked down in the general election, but then in a primary election with the lower voter turnout, it passed overwhelmingly. And I think if this thing gets on the ballot, it's probably going to be next spring.
Mhm.
And I just from the local officials I'm talking to here and the way I've kind of seen them kind of get vocal on some of the proposals that went through the General Assembly earlier this year. I think our local police chiefs, I think our fire chiefs, I think the people that protect us are going to stand up and they're going to educate the public. And I think, and maybe I'm optimistic, but in a spring election cycle where voter turnout is lower, I
Mhm.
think that it would probably be defeated. And that's not unprecedented because there have been tax repeal issues in Ohio in the past that have been on the ballot that have not passed that you think would just be no brainers. But I think when people are confronted with the reality that, okay, if we repeal property taxes, guess what's going to cost more? Your homeowner's insurance, right? Because as soon as the fire protection's not there, they can't fire the fire protection funding. The insurance companies are, so we're going to be paying somebody, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be public or private. There's just all sorts of downstream impacts that I think people aren't aware of, and I think as they become more aware of that, in a primary election type of setting with the
Mhm.
lower voter turnout, I think there's a chance to turn it away. But I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. You bring up you know, the fire and police union really flexed their muscle a few years ago with the Senate Bill 5 issue.
NFL five, yep.
And, they came out real strong against that thing and they were able to declare victory on election evening, largely based on the power of those union members getting out there. You brought up some of the local leadership you have there in Union County on property taxes. I know your county auditor, Mrs. Weaver, brought some other county auditors into Marysville a couple weeks ago. I'm just curious, could you give us an idea of how they feel the General Assembly is handling this issue? And do they have some different recommendations since they're kind of boots on the ground?
Yeah, I like that idea of boots on the ground, right? They're the practitioners. They're the ones that have to make all of this stuff work. They make the Byzantine bureaucratic system of property tax work. They're frustrated. You could hear it in their voices. They're frustrated because they don't feel like they're being heard by the members of the General Assembly. And how often is it that you can get uh, elected representatives from 88 counties to agree on anything, right?
That's
But
pretty rare.
Yeah, and so the County Auditors Association has they've done their work, they've done their homework. Carl Keith is the Montgomery County Auditor. He was over here, and we had the Logan County Auditor was here, I believe, during that. The Franklin County Auditor, who's a staunch Democrat, was here for that event. And the auditors have been going around the state doing these education sessions, basically saying, "Hey, there's low hanging fruit that could be enacted by the General Assembly if they wanted to, that could actually help mid to low income households experience some relief." And so I go back to, if you can get 88 county auditors to agree on anything, that's amazing, because
Yeah.
they've all come to an agreement on 4 different proposals, and one would be to expand the homestead exemption program so that the eligibility would be broader. Another one would be to, I thought this was interesting, eliminate the non-business credit that is out there right now on a property. If it's a non-business that gets a credit, and instead take whatever's funding that and expand the owner occupancy credit,
Okay.
right? So you benefit people like you and me who are living in our houses every day. They're
Yeah.
also talking about limiting the growth in revenue received by school districts to the rate of inflation, right?
Okay.
So, which I think that's reasonable. And then the other piece, the other component is really kind of a menu of targeted relief mechanisms that could be used at the local level, because Miami County is not like Union County. Union County is not like Franklin County. We all have different needs. And so they're like, hey, there are some things that we can do to provide auditors at the local level the ability to provide some targeted relief. But you could tell they're frustrated, because their call to action was call your legislators, because they're not listening to us, right? Call, and so they're like putting this call to action now. It's like, hey, contact your legislator and tell them to consider the county auditors for proposals. And you can find, if you go out and look at the Ohio County Auditor Association website, it's right out there. So if folks want to go check that out for themselves. I'm not an advocate for it. I'm just sharing the information. Um, but they are the experts, and my county auditor here, she's been the county auditor for many years, and I've recently been able to sit down and talk with her about these issues, and she's smart as a whip,
Yeah.
trying to do her best. And, I would not want to be a county auditor or a county treasurer these days, because I just think they get the brunt of all of it.
Well, especially the treasurer. He's the one you got to write the check out to.
Not fun. Not
No,
fun.
not fun at all. And so, with that, one of the things that makes Ohio's property tax system so complex is that it's just so old and archaic. And there's this concept of like inside millage. One of the things you talked about was the 20 mil floor for school districts, and you recently opined or stated that that's like a poverty level for school funding. And I was like, whoa, that's a new way to think about that. How do you see that working?
Well, that was shared with me by one of the local politicos here who knows the details and the ins and outs of the system. And I'm always looking for interesting ways to explain the 20 mil floor. As soon as you say those words, people's eyes glaze over and they're like, where's the mop? I got to mop the floor. And so when this individual shared that analogy with me, I was like, wow, that is really powerful, because when you think about it, inside millage, I wish they'd just call it what it is. Inside millage is unvoted, guaranteed tax revenue that the state allows government entities to collect. And in the state of Ohio, the government has determined that school districts are allowed to collect so much money inside millage, right? And anything that they collect over and above the floor, so above the floor, gets discounted on an annual basis as property values go up. So your taxes
Mhm.
don't go up disproportionately. And basically, what the law says in Ohio is, once you get to the minimum 20 mil floor, then those voted tax levies no longer are discounted. They start going into effect. to make the district whole because it's not allowed to go below the poverty level because of
Correct.
the amount of money that it is collecting. So really that 20 mil floor is the lowest amount that a district can go. And again, that looks different for every district based on valuations in their district. Like in Union County, it's a lot of money, but you go to Southeast Ohio, where the economy is not as robust, the growth is not as robust. You go to Appalachia, and you know, 20 mil floor is a lot lower than what it is
Yeah.
here in Marysville or in Troy. But it
Yep.
really is. It's kind of the state mandated poverty level. They require districts to get so much in that unvoted inside millage. And so when those circuit breakers kind of kick in and the levies start going up after the districts hit the 20 mil floor, that's when people get upset because they feel like that's an unvoted tax increase. Well, theoretically, no, it's not. The voters
You voted
approved
for it.
tax levies, right? And to your point, the Byzantine way that the Rube Goldberg property tax system works in Ohio, uh, it makes it feel like a tax increase, but it's not unvoted. It's just allowed to go into effect the way it was voted in the first place.
Yeah, and that causes a lot of consternation. And it's also a system that really exposes the inequities in it. Because like you said, the 20 mil floor in Vinton County might get the Vinton County School District X amount, but the 20 mil floor in Marysville, you're 8, 9, 10 times that amount just because of the development that's there
Right.
in Marysville. And I think that was, you go back, whoa, like 30 years ago with the DeRolf ruling, that was like the thing because it's like you can't rely completely on property taxes because the property valuations are just so variant throughout the state of Ohio,
Right.
depending on where you're at. So, in the state budget that was just signed a month ago, just a little over a month ago, our beloved governor had gotten out his veto pen,
Yeah.
struck some things down. So emergency levies are gone. So I
Well,
mean,
they're in the process of overriding that, right? So the Ohio Senate still has to vote to.
correct, correct.
So it's not done yet, but emergency levies and then replacement levies for townships are gone too.
Yeah, yeah, and that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt them quite a bit. I think that's one of the things that we if we had a little more context to this conversation, townships and school districts are reliant on property taxes because that's the only source of funding they get. Now, some school districts have income taxes,
Income taxes, yeah.
but not. I don't know if you have a lot of them over there in Union County.
We have a couple here.
Yeah, most of those school districts here in Miami County do, but it's still overly reliant on the property tax, and that's where the money comes from. And I don't mean so like if you are a school district that's growing and you want to do a building project, you can only use property taxes to do a bond issue. You
Right.
can't bond it. You can't use income tax as a funding mechanism for a bond issue, for example. And those bond issues, millions and millions of dollars. That's just crazy. States on the other hand, they get money from income taxes, the sales tax
For now, right?
for now.
Vivek Ramaswamy was in Union County on Sunday, and I got to hear him speak. And one of his goals is to eliminate the income tax entirely in Ohio. So that's
So if you eliminate the income tax, the citizens eliminate the property tax. All you're left is with a consumption sales tax, right?
right. Which is what we don't have income tax, we don't have corporate taxes, tangible property tax is gone. We'll have property taxes gone as what do you tax, right? And so um, again, we're heading towards a reckoning. We're heading towards some sort of reckoning where we're going to have to figure this out. And uh, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
So,
Meanwhile, the
yeah,
Haslams get a new stadium.
with the $600 million in the unclaimed funds category. So here's the pitch to our readers. Um, Make sure you get on the state of Ohio's unclaimed funds website if you have any unclaimed funds there, and
Get your
you
money.
would be surprised. Make sure you get those dollars as soon as you can.
Yeah, get your money while you can. Believe me, I'm out. I check out there a couple times a year. You just never know.
Another thing that was kind of vetoed were these county budget commissions authorities. I don't know. Before this, did you ever hear of a county budget commission, Joe?
I think it depends on where you live, right? It's like,
Okay.
and most of our counties, they don't do anything. They're like a rubber stamping agency, and they meet perfunctorily and do their thing, and we never hear of them. They're nothing. But there are a few counties in Ohio where they actually exercise some authority. There are a few of them, but yeah, it's like, who knew that could be a tool to talk about? I mean, you'd be basically uh, empowering that budget commission to have the power at the local level to raise or lower taxes. And my question is, are they able to do that for everybody? Do they have to do it uniformly, or can they do it property by property? I mean, there's a lot of questions I have about that budget commission's authority.
In a previous life, I worked in local government and I knew a little bit about county budget commissions. So this was back in the day when we still had the local government fund. So basically, the way it would work, the state would give counties a chunk of money, and then the county budget for like townships, the county budget commission would then allocate those dollars to each township um, from that pot of money. And so the the county budget commission, I think, would probably do it on a district by district basis rather than like a parcel by parcel basis.
Yeah,
But again, you're leaving that decision up to three um, elected officials. I think it's the prosecutor, the auditor, and one county commissioner
yeah,
that makes up the county budget commission. And it's like these guys, they may be wonderful elected officials, but they don't understand school finance.
right,
Um, and it goes to another thing that the governor cut, which was limiting the school district cash balances that were on the books. And, I think there was talk between 40% and 30%. As I've talked to school officials, it's like when they get their money in, they know they're going to have high balances in the early years of a levy. They spend that balance down, and then once it gets to a critical point, it's like, uh-oh, we need another levy.
right. Yeah. Well, and they also use that money to have their rating agencies give them a good
Yeah,
rating. They can have bonds to build their buildings, and so there's some unintended consequences with messing with that cash balance. And I'm of the philosophy: if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If you're gonna if you're gonna cap school districts, we should do that with municipalities. We should do that with counties. Because some of the loudest voices are setting in control of hundreds of millions of dollars of assets and investments for cities and counties that do the same thing with our taxpayer dollars, right?
correct.
And so we're asking, so for me, it's just kind of like, I get if we're going to do it for the schools, awesome. Let's also apply that to the state of Ohio, which has, quite a healthy rainy day fund that it
Yeah,
carries every year. So if we're going to do 40% for the schools, let's do 40% for everybody and see how that goes over.
good
I
point,
think it's,
Joe. Good
I mean,
point.
is that unreasonable? I mean, it feels like,
No, I don't think it's unreasonable.
so that whole 40% thing was never discussed as a public policy bill at the state house. It came up in backroom discussions during the House budget committee discussions this spring. The House wanted to do it at 30%. They approved it at the last minute with no debate in the House late at night, like they do all the budgets. They sent it over to the Senate. The Senate came back and said, we want 50%. Women turnover is 50%, which is better, but it's a higher threshold. But then they compromised on 40%. of this. And I think Governor DeWine, uh, saw it for what it kind of is, which is a politically motivated ploy to punish public schools by legislators who aren't fans of our public school systems. And that's another nuance that happens in here, right? Um, we have a legislature that is really not a fan of the public school systems. And it's not that they're against all public school systems. We have some really fundamental problems in our large school districts across the state of Ohio. The Columbuses, the Clevelands, some of our biggest, Cincinnati, those big school
Yeah.
districts, they do have real issues. They're spending a ton of money per student. They're getting no results. And so they put these policies in effect to really rein in some of the larger school districts, and they wind up hurting the districts that are doing more with less, as Governor George Voinovich, God bless his soul, used to say.
Yeah.
I think that, you can't paint all school districts with a paintbrush, but if you don't think that other policies around education aren't governing some of these financial decisions, we're all fooling ourselves. It's all kind of tied together.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with kind of like the voucher debate and things like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of like, I'm not opposed to private schools. I worked at the state level and helped the state, uh, you know, ask the United States Supreme Court to uphold the Cleveland School Voucher Program back in the early 2000s. And I think that competition for our schools is a good thing, but we can't gut our public schools for political reasons, because and go all private, because like in Troy, when I was a young man growing up on Virginia Avenue in Troy, we didn't have a real robust Troy Christian school alternative in the community, right? Troy Christian was just getting up and running back in the 80s, and I remember because I used to be a janitor there when I was a teenager. Uh, I didn't attend there. I'm a Troy High grad, but here in Marysville, we have our early college high school and our traditional Marysville High School. We have no private high schools in Union
okay.
County. We have a couple of small private religious schools, but they have no capacity to be a competitive, a
Yeah.
competitive power with the public school system. So where I live, we need our public schools to be strong. I want my kids are all graduates of the Marysville schools and have gone on and been successful, but we have to get our heads around, you know, not just the budget stuff, but the policy stuff that's going on. And so I understand the difficulty that our legislature has, but I also feel like maybe some hands get overplayed too far on funding private education at the expense of public, and public perceptions that are driven by, uh, you paid for a football stadium, but you're not helping to fund the schools or property tax relief. It goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that doesn't really get talked about a lot in this debate is, the state of Ohio has 611 school districts.
Yeah.
Each school district hires a licensed superintendent. So you're talking a very small field of credentialed individuals. Each one of those individuals, I would assume, even on the low side, makes at least $90,000 a year in their total compensation package. One of the things you don't hear a lot about is consolidation of smaller school districts.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if you have many of those in Union County or not.
We only have 3 school districts in Union County. So
Holy cow!
yeah, yeah. So but that's a vestige of, it was a smaller rural county 40, 50 years ago, and Union County is really growing up now. We're in our adolescence, I think, because that's the way we act some of the time. But yeah, we only have 3 here, but I think it's a fair point, and I hear the Unigov argument made in several circles, not just with regard to schools, but you have townships that don't have the infrastructure to do everything they need. I think that would be an interesting conversation to have at the broader level is how can we maybe restructure local government for the 21st century and not for the 18th century.
Yeah, it's true because it's like, when you talk about townships, school districts, cities, counties, you're working from a playbook that was largely written in 1803.
Right? Yeah, that's nobody's fault, right? We're just growing up, we're changing, and I think that yeah, I think it's a legit conversation we should be having.
Yeah, because I mean, we have 9 school districts here in Miami County.
Yeah,
Um, Troy's the biggest one, but you've got Bradford, Covington, Newton. These are all smaller districts. The way I take a look at it is if you've got 2 neighboring districts and you're both fielding a D7 high school football team.
yeah. No,
Well,
I
and of
think
course, it's Friday night that keeps these consolidations from happening. I mean, that's just the political way it goes.
changes
And
are
so,
bad.
take a look in your crystal ball, Joel. Is anything going to happen this year in Columbus when it comes to property taxes?
I don't, I'll be surprised if it does, but who knows? I mean, I think that the legislature knows that this petition movement to put the ballot repeal on next May has momentum. It has
Yeah,
momentum. Some of their most ardent supporters in the Republican Party are the ones circulating the petitions, right? They're just done with it. They're burn it down. Kamikaze fiscal policy, as I said earlier. Governor DeWine, in his vetoes, said he was forming a task force on
yeah.
property tax reform. He wants them to meet. I actually talked to the governor. He was here in Union County a couple weeks ago, and I asked him about this, and he was unveiling a new rest stop here locally, and the press gangle afterwards. Um, but he would like for this task force to get together and consider the special committee that the General Assembly had last session that ended on
Yeah.
December 31st, take their homework and their report, which the General Assembly did nothing with in the budget process, which they should have. Not a single recommendation in the state budget on property tax reform came from that special commission report last year that the General Assembly worked on. And everything that they did, everything the governor vetoed never existed before the General Assembly cooked those things up behind closed doors during the budget process in the late night hours. So the governor says, hey, I want them to get together. I want them to have 90 days. I would like for the General Assembly to do something when it reconvenes in the fall. Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman, was pretty angry about that proposal. He spoke to State House reporters several weeks ago and said, I'm not interested in doing that. We already did a special committee. So that piece is probably dead. Will they conjure up another behind closed doors type of deal to placate property owners and pass it by the end of the year? Maybe. Who knows? I would hope the whole issue is where's the money going to come from? Who's going to pay for it, right? I would hope that cooler heads would prevail. And if we lived in a common sense world where cooler heads prevailed, one of the things that I've heard out there that I like is at least come up with some sort of means tested reform so that we can help actual households who are at risk of rising property taxes not get kicked out of their homes. Now, that's a claim you always hear, but I've yet to find an individual who was kicked out of their home because they did not pay their property taxes because of ability. Now, there's a difference between willingly paying and not paying and ability to pay. I've never heard of anybody who's lost their home because they couldn't pay for their property taxes. At least around here, I'm looking for examples. So if readers are out there and they know of somebody who's lost their home, drop me a line. I'd like to write a story about it. But my hope is that they would at the very least by the end of this year or sometime in the first part of 2026 come up with some sort of means tested solution to help mid and low income people on fixed incomes manage this property tax thing, because it's only going to get worse as we move forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. Getting back to your point, I mean, it's like I've seen how the wheels of government go. If you don't pay your property taxes, especially if you are a fixed income senior, there's a county treasurer would be loath to
Right.
actually file a foreclosure action against your property. They would much rather try to create some type of payment plan
Right.
to bring you back into good graces rather than to just kick you out of your home.
Right. And I think our county treasurer here in Union County is doing a really good job. Andy Smara, he's teamed up with the county prosecutor, and they're going after the top 20, the biggest delinquencies, right? And those are the ones who willingly don't pay. They just ignore the law and they don't pay. But I think that gives the prosecutor and the treasurer air cover to help those people who actually have income-based needs and paying their bills out there. But the frustration's real. If you see a mushroom cloud next week coming from the Union County direction, it's because people are getting their updates on their valuation increases. And that's just going to fuel this more and more and more until somebody does something about it.
I mean, we're in our reevaluation same here in Miami County. And I mean, even with the triennial update 3 years ago, things increased 15, 18, 20%. So, I mean, you're probably going to see close to the same thing now. And last November, we just voted in a huge bond issue to build new schools here in Troy. So, I mean, it's a 1-2 punch
Yeah.
for most folks when it comes to their property taxes. So I hear Joe does not have much faith that anything of any real substance is going to come out of Columbus. Um, and then the other thing is, when state legislators come back after Labor Day, they're going to be talking redistricting. I mean,
Yeah.
they have to redo the maps because of the convoluted process that we've created. Those maps were only good for 4 years.
Right.
If 2025 is going to look anything like 2021, that could be a long drawn out process. The Supreme Court makeup has changed a bit, so I mean maybe it won't, but it was still kind of an ugly process that we saw
You
with
you
that.
you have Maureen O'Connor is a conservative jurist, but compared to some of the political points of view at the state house, is a liberal. You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just where we are these days. So we'll see where it goes. If I wouldn't be surprised if we get to next spring and the General Assembly is just kind of waiting to see how this ballot issue goes, and they'll have some sort of game plan in place if it passes. But I think they're just hoping that they might just play the game and let it play out, and uh, you know, actively in the background behind closed doors try to help get it defeated, the repeal defeated,
Mhm.
without doing it, do it through proxies, so to speak. And let the local government folks do it. But I think, just knowing how this General Assembly works and knowing the lack of desire to do anything on this topic of anything meaningful, play the game, let it see how this ballot issue goes, and hope that it fails in May of next year.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said about the how some of these things just kind of ended up in the budget. I mean, there was no real policy discussion. There was no full robust hearings on these ideas and concepts in Columbus. It was just, hey, we can stick it in the budget bill. Let's just stick it in the budget bill. And it if the approach is let's wait and see what happens with the potential referendum for next spring, you're losing a lot of time to create real changes in the system, which makes me think if we see anything, it's going to be a very piecemeal approach.
I think you're right.
You might, yeah, you might see a means tested program come out. You might see the homestead exemption go from 25,000 to 50,000. You might see some tinkering with the CAUV values for farms and agricultural land, but that's really gonna be about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that's fair. It's going to be piecemeal, and at the end of the day, it all comes down to how do you pay for it? Where's the money come from? And how can you do something that looks meaningful enough to appease all the emotion out there, which I'm not sure you can do right now.
yeah. So I'm just curious. I have also been paying attention. You might have a contested primary for a state rep seat next year.
Yeah, it sounds like we have a couple candidates that are stepping forward. We have a term limited state rep,
Okay.
and we'll see how that race plays out. You have one candidate who has run one cycle and lost. You have a newcomer also taking a shot at the seat, and both of them, I think are earnest, and they both have what I would say is they both have significant backers in their corner. So we'll see which one prevails in the spring. But in Union County, the way it goes here, that district is mainly Union County, part of Marion County. Back to your district drawing conversation, very safe Republican district. So whoever wins that primary will likely, will likely be
Yeah.
the person to succeed. And so it's feels early to talk about next November's outcome, but next November's outcome is actually determined next May here locally in that race.
Yeah, we see the same thing here in Miami County. And I'm just wondering, are these property tax issues, are they primed up to be a major issue in that race?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think the candidates, I think they're going to have a position on it, and I think that they'll be talking a lot about it between now and then because this may be the hottest issue working up to that primary election date.
What other issues are kind of bubbling up there in Marysville that either
You know,
happening on the state or county level?
Yeah, I think income tax is going to be a big issue. I think that the candidates are making income tax a big issue. Growth, economic development. I think people want to see economic development reform in some way, shape, or form. There's growth here is a very top of mind topic, just because we have so much happening at the city, county, level. We're right next to Dublin, Ohio. The southeast part of this county is. I can remember a day when you would drive 15 miles to Columbus or to Dublin. It was all cornfields. And yesterday I drove to Columbus with my wife and literally went maybe 2 or 3 miles without anything there. It's just there's a little stretch now between Columbus and Marysville that's not developed, including right off the highway. You can see it sitting there as one of these giant data centers, and we're going to have another one coming here pretty soon too. So growth is a big deal. So they're going to be talking a lot about growth. They're going to be talking, a lot about, I think as much as you think about the Republican primary issues where you're going to differentiate yourself. I've already seen language about how Ohio's a border state. So immigration, will probably be something. I actually have a story tomorrow that I'm getting ready to publish with regard to ICE activity at our regional jail and how many people there have been handed over to ICE because they don't belong in the country. So I've got some data. I just talked to the administrator of our regional jail yesterday on that. But those kind of immigration, you think about what those bigger Republican
Yeah,
primaries are, they'll come into this race too.
which I mean, I get that, because I've run for public office. Nobody goes to a ballot box to vote for their state representative. It's
No.
always the the
Oh, yeah.
higher ranking offices that get all the oxygen and all the attention. and you just kind of filter down the ballot with the little letter behind their name, and that's how you end up getting elected.
Everybody
And
wanted to have
it's tough.
taken. Everybody wanted to have their picture taken with Vivek Ramaswamy on Sunday here in Union. So it's like, how can I get my picture taken with this guy? So and that's you're right. It's going to be what's up ticket.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like some of the real issues, though, things that we're talking about, property taxes on the local level, energy infrastructure is going to be huge because at least, and I think you guys are AES over there in Marysville.
Yes, yeah,
Um, PUCO is going to be looking at rate increases for electricity here. Um, the data centers take a lot of juice. It's just people are getting tapped out, and a lot of these local decisions. We're not thinking about those decisions when we go to the ballot box so many
right.
times.
Yeah. Interesting time, and I think we'll see. I think that even though we're not going to have a contested primary with regard to the gubernatorial race, we're going to hear a lot of conversation around property taxes there too. So
I'm just curious, are there any rumors or stories that you're hearing that Jim Tressel might get in the race, or is
you
or is
know,
Jim just
I think this is just the realist in me. I've worked, at the state office level, and to be able to run today a state operation and actually win, you have to have money. You have to be able to run television in 8 television markets across the state, and you have to have a party machine at the local level to help you activate your base when it comes to election time. And from what I saw Sunday, Ramaswamy has Union County locked up, or at least Union County Republicans has the machine locked up. I think people are excited about him as a candidate. First time I've heard him speak since I saw him on the presidential debates, and he was sharp. He was very comfortable on that stage talking the issues that he was talking, making sure people know that he is Cincinnati raised, born and raised. He's an Ohio guy. Um, Talks about the American dream very eloquently. 80% of what he talked about Sunday afternoon here was about education reform, right? And so I thought, wow, this guy is going to be hard to beat. Jim Tressel, I don't think you can trestle ball into the governor's mansion in Ohio. DeWine's backing him, but DeWine's a great human being. If you don't know Mike DeWine, if you don't know his wife, I covered Mike DeWine as a reporter back in the 90s when he was the lieutenant governor under George Voinovich before he went to the U.S. Senate. Good guy then. He's the same person. You can love him or hate him. Some people call him a rhino, but he is what you see is what you get with him. But he's old school Republican Party,
Oh yeah.
right? And I just think that Tressel's probably more of that centrist old school Republican Party in a lot of ways. I'm just not sure he's got the gravitas to overcome the money, 9.7 million Vivek has raised in this last cycle, and a PAC has raised 17 million to support him. So he's already got TV bought out next year, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I
I mean,
if Tressel gets in, he's going to have to really want it and have to have a fire in the belly and do some things that he's probably not comfortable doing.
yeah, I don't think the old ball coach could beat Vivek. But I mean, if you were on Team Tressel, you would think we've got some good name ID. Um, you've got a fairly good reputation with the public. I mean, who does not like the Buckeyes? Uh,
Right.
you've got some wind in your sails,
Yeah.
if you wanted to do it. But yeah, I mean, the Ramaswamy freight train is on on the clear track going downhill. I mean, it's going to be
His biggest contender was our Attorney General, Dave Yost, right? Yost dropped out of the race a couple months ago after Ramaswamy got the Republican Party to endorse, which it doesn't this early usually.
Yeah.
Um, but Dave Yost introduced Vivek Ramaswamy on Sunday afternoon here. Like they were best friends and like they always side. It was a really compelling introduction. And I see somebody out here says Vivek is a Trump lapdog. Telling you, man, federal politics, the people I saw Sunday hate the federal government. they, and Ramaswamy, I think, did a good job of kind of bringing the conversation down to the state level and making it about Ohio versus the world almost. There was some Trump rhetoric in there, make Ohio great again, make America great again, which is fine, if you're a Republican. But it was a powerful rallying of the political base, I thought, kind of seeing it firsthand on Sunday. I mean, there are few candidates who this early on are that polished. So I think that Ramaswamy is his own, it's his to lose as far as.
Yeah. Not only in the primary, but also in the general. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's talk that in the news today that Sherrod Brown is looking for a campaign manager, and most people are speculating that it's to run for Senate to oust John Husted. But some people are saying Sherrod Brown could jump in and potentially compete for governor. But I think that Sherrod Brown would want to go back to Washington D.C. myself. But we'll see.
I agree with you there. Vivek is a candidate that's kind of cast his own mold. And his campaign is going to be something that Ohioans haven't really seen up to this point. We've not been good, bad, or indifferent. We've not been blessed with dynamic gubernatorial candidates.
Right.
Mike DeWine, wonderful guy. Met him a couple times. Nobody knows Ohio like Mike DeWine, but
that's right.
He's not going to fire up anybody.
But he runs on his character, right? I mean, that's what he does.
Yeah.
Bob Taft did the same thing. In a lot of ways, probably the most charismatic governor we've had, in the last 50 years might have been George Voinovich. And he was a very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe. I'm also thinking, well, I mean, Jim Rhodes was just kind of a man of his own. Yeah. I mean, he was.
Now you're going back even further, right?
You're going back pretty far. John Kasich had a little bit of fire in him, but John always gave the impression that he'd take the flamethrower to anybody that got in his way.
Kind of what that from him, and but we'll see where it goes. It's it's going to be, there are a lot of different issues out there, but I think that I think the Republicans clearly have the infrastructure and the financial wherewithal at this point. I don't see any Democratic candidates being able to even stand up even close to what the Republicans are.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't really even matter what happens on the federal level. I think at this point, it's going to be full steam ahead for the Republicans in 26. And that's going to help nothing but the down ballot folks, Secretary of State, Auditor,
AG.
Yeah. And even some of the, Supreme Court races, I'm sure will benefit from that as well. Yeah. So, Joe, we've gone over an hour. I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that we need to cuss and discuss while we're here?
I think we covered a lot of ground in the last hour. We'll have to get back together in a couple months and see where things stand.
That'd be great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Joe. This was a blast. Thank you so much.
It was fun, man. Hopefully you get out and enjoy your weather. I hope you get your bike back.
Oh, me too. It's still in the shop. Hopefully today. We'll see what happens.
You picked a bad time of the summer to put your bike in a shop, man.
Yeah, broken spoke will do that. Yeah, yeah, you got it. Well, thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.